Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to be here with you today, and I do apologize for having perhaps complicated your schedule a little bit. Supposed to speak earlier, schedules change urgently. The Deputy Prime Minister Somkit, who was supposed to be here today, wasn't able to make it, and he was actually supposed to be with me at my ministry earlier this morning, the later part of the morning also, and that's why I had asked the organizer to move the session down a little bit. He skipped on my session also, by the way, but for good reason. I understand he went to the railway authority or the train thing, making sure that things are moving forward. So I think that's a good thing. It shows that we are serious about reform, about moving forward, about keeping our words on making supporting investments that will be starting real soon, and next year will be important. And it's the same with ICT. I can tell you that we operate under the same agenda. Prior to coming to the ministry, which is only 3 or 4 months ago, like you, I was in the private sector, but more in the academic side of things. I was president of a private university here, so I dealt a lot with the future of the young generations, young people. Now coming to the ministry is similar. We're dealing with the future, but on a broader scale is the future of Thailand, moving Thailand towards the digital era. So it's widely expected, as we all know, that 2020 will be the year of people and things are connected at a global scale. And digital economy and digital society will indeed be more than ever converged and integrated into our lives. As we know too well, Thailand is stuck in a growth trap, so to speak. The ecosystem that we now have at the moment can carry us only so far, but unfortunately, no more. Our ICT is no exception. The infrastructure and business model we used for more than 5 decades needs new ecosystem to allow firms and individuals to take on the challenges and opportunities that are being offered throughout the world. However, I think we are fortunate to have taken steps while other countries likewise are adapting to paradigm shift as well. We know that great nations, commercial and industrial sectors on global scale are quickly taking themselves in the right digital position prior to 2020. For Thailand, the government has set as a policy that we are transforming Thailand and integrating Thailand into the digital and economy society. After all, digital transformation is not just about IT, we all know that, or telecom or broadcast. It cuts across all sectors and requires careful allocation of scarce national resource. I'd like to emphasize that the action that we are taking is a part of the comprehensive plan of this government to reform, as I said earlier, and move Thailand forward. Prime Minister has reiterated many times that our task is to make sure that this country of 67 million people move on the right path. The reform should be comprehensive and broad-based. ranging from institutional change, new business model on one hand, to education and human capital on the other. I'd like to go one by one on the main points regarding what we're doing for the digital agenda. First and foremost, this transformation has a long-term goal and needs the institutional reform. At present, the tools and mechanisms available to us are not designed to be an effective agent of change. To move forward, to move towards a digital Thailand, we need a new landscape. A landscape that is systematic enough to take on the digital challenges. The ministry, ICT ministry, is responsible, first of all, to draw up a national digital economy master plan, which will be binding on all other government agencies and public organizations to take concerted actions within their scope of activities. Now, the plan is being worked on. It has received several rounds of hearings from the public, from various stakeholders. I expect the plan, at least the first draft, comprehensive draft, to be completed by the end of this year. Then we will present it to the government, to the cabinet, and if everything goes according to plan, then there will be laws, drafts of legislations. I'll touch on those later, that will go hand in hand, and that would form important foundation for our effort to drive forward digital Thailand. In addition to creating the plan, the national plan, in terms of structure, we will have in place, hopefully towards the end of next year, or maybe sooner, a digital economy and social and society council, sort of a national council, chaired by the Prime Minister, and also a digital economy development office, a specialized agency to act as a secretariat. So in other words, we should have a comprehensive and effective structure to drive the policy forward in terms of digital activities. The ministry, ICT ministry, will become an enabling agency to assess and expedite the process. Even the name, some of you may have heard, may be changed, but that is still being discussed. Some people like the present name, the current name. Some prefer something else that points to the digital Thailand, but the name is, it's not the main issue here. It's the substance. So the ministry itself, with a new structure, will be the catalyst for change within the government, and also to interact externally, to ensure policy and practice coordination are in line with the National Digital Economy Plan. For example, right now we have the Electronic Government Agency, or EGA, who's a key mover on the government effort reform towards a digital government. They will play a key part in the new plan, continue to. Another agency under the ministry, Electronic Transaction Development Agency, or ETA, will handle the non-government side, including trust, confidence building, promotion of commercial activities online, so on and so forth. The key is that, the point is that these two agencies, like others, will need reform themselves as well, so that they'll be able to respond even better to policy challenge and to better deliver on the national agenda. The second policy element that I'd like to mention is that the institutional reform requires legal and regulatory accommodation, new laws. We've been preparing a digital economy legislative package consisting of 8 main draft legislations, some of which are already now in the Parliament reading. We expect to forward all of these drafts to the National Legislative Assembly in the first quarter of next year, 2016, so that they can become law by the third quarter of next year, if not the second quarter. The key draft legislatures include the basic act that would create the national body that I mentioned, as well as other key agencies, and to empower them to act accordingly. Others include the Personal Data Protection Act, Privacy Act, Cybersecurity Act, and an NBTC Amendment Act. Now, I'd like to point out that these drafts, these legislatives, are virtually new to Thailand. Right now, for ICT, we basically have one computer, the so-called one computer law, out of date. And even if we are moving forward with digital Thailand, then we need a landscape that is completed, that is supported by appropriate legal framework, so that we can have confidence in the system, both on the business side as well as on the social side. So that's the goal of the second policy element, is that the ministry will drive the new laws, trying to make them effective as soon as possible. And I have instructed the drafting committee to present a draft legislation that is in line with international minimum standard, at least. So it shall provide adequate level of protection recognized by the international norms and standards, such as APEC cross-border privacy rule, the OECD guidelines on the protection of privacy and transborder flows of personal data. And third, the third policy element is that the government will better coordinate between the national socio-economic policy directives and regulatory practices. For 2 decades, we've established independent regulators for both telecoms and broadcast, in line with Thailand's schedule of commitment pledged in 1994 and 1996 WTO commitment. Now, the independent national regulatory agency like the INRA model works reasonably well for Thailand. The NBTC gradually opened up the telecom and broadcast markets through regulatory practices. The main event, of course, was a spectrum auction of the 1800 megahertz, which we saw the market force in action recently. We are expecting competition for the market again soon, within 2 weeks' time, when the NBTC will auction of the 900 megahertz. Now, the effort to release more telecommunications resource to continue, so that the competition in the market will follow. The legislation will put in the delicate balance between macroeconomic and social policy that has to be made by the government and the Digital Economy Council that I mentioned earlier, on the one hand, and the telecom broadcast regulatory policy that is within the regulator's domain. Under the amendment, that is the NBTC amendment, the regulator will have a comfort of carrying out national macroeconomic and social policy. And at the same time, we can be confident that the independence of the regulators will be maintained. Ladies and gentlemen, the fourth policy element that I'd like to touch on is the broadband and connectedness policy. In order to overcome the growth trap, it's been a policy of this government to progressively modernize Thai digital infrastructure upon which the new services and new innovation can prosper. Broadband infrastructure is critical for digital economy. It is known too well that connectivity will transcend national and physical boundaries. At such time, the technology will allow people to gain access to and also use of network across all platforms at high speed, speed of light, people are talking about now. Territorial and geographical limits will be a stumbling block to the open platform of the future, potentially. Thus, those who are left beyond the reach of the network will be worse off. Now, we're not going to let that happen in Thailand. Thailand has strong fundamentals to make full use of borderless and open connectedness. The missing link that can bridge us today to the digital tomorrow is a befitting broadband policy that will encourage the deployment of broadband infrastructure or rolling out of fiber network. The upcoming digital master plan on broadband services to high-speed infrastructure shall be guaranteed. Thai citizens, regardless of their economic, social differences, are entitled to broadband access. At the present time, we are still behind in terms of getting fiber to the home. And that's just the reality we're facing right now. The second principle is availability. Broadband reach shall be available as a part of universal services. Our ministry will outline the access regime through the Digital Master Plan and a USO plan. The third core principle is affordability. The best mechanism to deliver high-speed access to all over Thailand at affordable price is a market mechanism. Competition and market liberalization can be enhanced through adoption of open network provision, ONP, and the non-discrimination principle. The net neutrality principle also can have profound effect and long-lasting effect to drive us into the 2020s. The evidence we see nowadays is the rise of over-the-top OTT, which challenges the legacy telecom and broadcast regulatory principles. For example, one can easily assume that OTT is an electronic communication services and become part of the regulation. If so, then new services and innovation we have today would be affected. Ladies and gentlemen, this digital infrastructure deployment stands as a key reason why we pursue the holistic approach to amend the laws, reform existing institutions, and foster a new industrial model, for example, the 4.0, and take on investment challenges and incentives. It is not an easy task to implement the anywhere, anytime, any devices, and any platform broadband policy. But I see it as a key challenge for Thailand and our ministry in particular to take on. We believe that the digital infrastructure leading to the 2020s will demand huge investment from the public and the private sector alike. To this end, the government has already indicated that we will consider the role of PPP, public-private partnership, for the digital infrastructure to thrive. I believe our stakeholders realize the importance of collaborative economy and the sharing of the network and facilities. The fifth policy element is the seed of growth for the Thai digital economy, specifically the SMEs, which we all know comprise a major portion and play a crucial role in the Thai economy, and also the micro SMEs and the entrepreneurs. Now, Thailand has a vibrant SMEs and strong innovative sectors to thrive in the digital single market that is forthcoming. Innovation at the SME, the micro level to access the digital market is a focal point in the government's economic policy. They are the seed of growth, and you have heard this many times from people involved in the economic policy formulation and implementation of our government. Now, there are many ongoing projects that I just like to mention that the ministry is sponsoring, supporting, or collaborating with other government agencies as well as private organizations, businesses, to launch projects that will promote and support the use of digital technology for Thai business owners, operators. The focus, though, is on the SMEs and smaller players. The large players, as we know, they can help themselves pretty well. So these projects are being launched. Another area that is very crucial is the digital skills and human capital. We have also initiated projects to promote startups, and we work with the Science Ministry, the Ministry of Finance, and others, the Ministry of Education, to do these projects. Because at the end of the day, technology you can acquire, but it's probably not of much use if we don't have our people ready, prepared to use these technologies in various activities in various fields within the society and the economy itself. So people skills, digital skills are very crucial, and they're very much part of the national plan. The sixth policy element is digital government reform. This involves a comprehensive and broad-based approach to bring about redistribution, value creation, and reallocation of resources so that government agencies can better discharge their services, catering to the private sector. Two basic goals. First is connected government. We want to make sure that we put in place an architecture for connecting government apparatus, various agencies, so that they can share information, they can do the big data stuff, analytics, and they can, with efficiency, and then they can share, secondly, the information, make information open to the public. We have started working on this. There are projects ongoing the ICT ministry is taking the lead pretty much on these. For example, to many of you it's already something very mundane, but for Thailand, you do business in Thailand, B2B, you still need tax invoice documents, physical tax invoice document. Starting next month, we're doing away with that. Thanks to the Ministry of Finance that's been working with us, we are going to make sure that it's, from now on, that it can be done electronically. That's just one small example. There are others. So we will transform the government, making sure that they're connected, they use digital technology appropriately, effectively. The seventh policy element is a policy towards our state enterprises. I'm sure many of you have been wondering about the future of our beloved state enterprises. Under the ministry, TOT and CAT, since they are main players in the market. In brief, both CAT and TOT, they will learn to survive in the collaborative economy. Historically, they represent huge investment that Thailand has spent over 5 decades. Both sparked the telecommunication modernization that we are enjoying the fruit of today. They jump-started the satellite communication, submarine cable link-up, data transfer, mobile telephone, which is a predecessor of today's wireless broadband. So both state enterprises have the resources actually to prosper in the digital age, but they too are trapped in their own legacy. It is easy to adopt the laissez-faire stance to the TOT and CAT. However, I think it's better to allow them to realize the value and the potential resided within the organizations. So the key is for TOT and CAT to undergo changes that will lead them on the path of sustainability that is also supportive and consistent with market practice. And as I said earlier, the future role of public sector will be to foster market, foster competition and innovation. TOT and CAT will therefore look to integrate more market mechanisms and disciplines into their corporate lives, including corporate governance. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope the foregoing points that I have outlined shed some light on the path toward the digital economy and society that Thailand has set for ourselves. In closing, I'd like to stress that in driving forward, we very much welcome inputs and participation from the international community as well as local communities, both the government and private sectors. And we have been doing that. We seek to engage and we seek to listen. As I mentioned, the package of laws are entirely new, virtually new to Thailand. And so we need to listen and we need to come out with the right stuff. We don't have much time, but we want to put in the right infrastructure, foundation, so that the various aspects of reform for Thailand can depend on the digital infrastructure that we will have in place. I attended the ASEAN ICT ministers meeting last week in Da Nang, Vietnam, and I can tell you, everybody, every country in ASEAN is on the path of digitizing something, the economy and everything. And the dialogue partners, China, Japan, the key ones, Korea, are now very much actively engaging the ASEAN countries. Everyone sees the opportunities that the digital ASEAN will bring, and Thailand too. The geographical location of Thailand, I think, is very much conducive to Thailand playing an active role as a digital hub in ASEAN, connecting from the north to the south out in ASEAN. So we're talking about infrastructure, connectivity, submarine cables, and so on and so forth. So I think we're looking at some very exciting time next year. There will be investments made in telecom, in the digital space, that will go along with other activities, transportation, rails, and others that the government will be supporting. So with that, I'm concluding my remarks, and I guess we have a little Q&A question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we have a panel discussion. May I invite Dr. Pansak Siri Rachatapong, Vice Minister, and Associate Professor Sutham Yunaitam, the Minister Advisor, and a moderator for this panel discussion, Mr. Thitithep Nophaket from Patra Securities Public Company Limited, on the stage, please.
Okay, first of all, I would like to thank you, Dr. Uttama, for such an informative and insightful speech. And now I will try to gain even more insight into the certain topic in the telecommunication sector. Let's start from the hot topic in the sector, the spectrum. Okay. Now, the government has just made nearly 80 billion baht from the auction of 1,800 megahertz. The auction of 900 megahertz is coming up in 2 weeks' time. But then if we look beyond the auction of the 900 megahertz, there are certain state enterprises that have a lot of spectrum. The TOT have 2.1 and 2.3 gigahertz. MCOT has 2.6 gigahertz, and CAT has 1.8 gigahertz. Now, what is the government policy in the state enterprise spectrum holding? Should we allow them to develop the spectrum, or should they return the spectrum to the NBTC so the NBTC can refarm or release the spectrum in the auction?
As I mentioned earlier, the two state enterprises, TOT and CAT, they themselves are undergoing reform. And they have been instructed to do so by our so-called State Enterprise Super Board, chaired by the Prime Minister. The Super Board drives reform efforts for in our state enterprises, Thai International, these two in the telecom, those in the transportation sector, and eventually there will be a national body pretty much along the line of the overall state enterprise holding company. You probably have heard that. But before that, reforms have started. And to your question, what would they do with the the spectrums are available within, within their possession, at least currently. I think we need to look at that issue in a broader picture of that reform effort. What they are doing is that they are coming up with new business models, how to use the available resources more efficiently to realize more value, financial value, as well as service value to the public. And the government, of course, is a shareholder of both. So what to do with the spectrum is very much crucial to their plans. But also crucial are other assets that they have, the backhaul, the towers, so on and so forth. Those will become even more valuable in the future as the market expands. So we tend to focus on the spectrum. But in fact, these two enterprises, state enterprises, have more than that. But they yet to be fully utilized. So I think what will happen to the spectrum, that would very much follow from their reform, their new business models. By law, of course, if the existing use expires, then they're supposed to return them to NBTC for new auctions. All right? But what hasn't expired, then they need to come up with a plan to better use those resources that they have. And the government's policy is to make sure that they do reform, okay, and that they come up with a credible plan, and that in the plan they think about working with the private operators, okay. Potential partnerships are possible. They do not need to do everything themselves anymore, and they shouldn't be doing everything themselves. So that's basically how we're looking at them.
Yes, thank you. So it sounds to me like it depends largely on their proposed business plan, on what they want to do with the spectrum.
I think we'll be hearing about partnerships that they've been working on with private operators, something that they haven't really done in the past.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Minister. Let's move on from the wireless to the wireline. You mentioned in your speech the importance of the fixed broadband network, and we all know that the fixed broadband in Thailand, it's still low compared to neighboring country. It's only 25% of the household. What would be the government role in driving the fixed broadband penetration? Would the government directly invest in the fixed broadband, or you would come up with a measure to encourage the private sector to invest in the fixed broadband? And if I remember correctly, the NBTC have a USO fund available for the remote area. Would the MICT involve the NBTC in developing the fixed broadband network for Thailand?
Yes, potentially we can work together, and I look forward to discussing with the NBTC on this issue, as well as other issues that will be of interest to the public. On the broadband issue, as you mentioned, and what I also touched on, that we have to work on that because it's very fundamental to our digital Thailand that people have access to broadband, not just in Bangkok, of course, but particularly in the rural areas. We're starting, for example, we're looking at projects where we would aim, right now, about 76% of our tambon, what do you call tambon? Huh? Yeah, but tambon, districts. ไม่ภาษาอังกฤษ What's tambon in English? districts, I guess, whatever. We aim to reach every village in Thailand, and there are about 50,000. Some already have the internet access, but the plan is within hopefully 2 to 3 years that we can cover them all. So access is important, availability, as I said, and affordability. Now, as to the particulars of the how to do it, we are working on that. And by the time we deliver the national plan on digital economy, we will have that in place. But I would envision investments by both the government as well as by the private sector. Business operators have already invested quite a bit in the broadband infrastructure themselves. And there's no reason why we cannot discuss and work together to see what works best for Thailand. There are a number of models deployed by various countries when it comes to a national broadband strategy. So we'll see what works best for Thailand.
May I add some point about the fixed broadband penetration, as you asked. Many countries use fixed broadband penetration as a key indicator. I think because of the quality and the cost maybe is lower than mobile broadband. But when we talk about fixed broadband, it's not mean we cannot use wireless. We can use both fixed wireless broadband and also wired broadband. So the government, I think we try to improve this factor by firstly try to use the policy of, as the minister mentioned, the infrastructure sharing that permit all the network provider to use the core backbone to expand the service. The second issue is when in town that the density of the user is quite a lot, and many end users they prefer to use wired broadband. Why I mean fiber optic. We have a problem with we call the right of way. As you can see, many cable or the tower of the electricity is so many. So the government have set up a committee to handle this issue. How we can some kind make sure that the infrastructure sharing on the cable. But now we try to set up the committee and put everything to underground, a cable pipe, for example. Yeah.
Is it possible that the state enterprise, the TOT and CAT, especially the TOT, would play a role in the national fixed broadband network?
They can. They can do that, and it's likely that they will. And that would be in their business plans that they're preparing.
And then since Dr. Pansak mentioned about the infrastructure sharing, the TOT and CAT Telecom are working with the private sector to set up the joint venture to operate the tower co, which would eventually lead to the infrastructure sharing. Is setting up the tower co the government priority because it would make certain income for TOT and CAT? It would make my phone bill goes down. Should we expect to see the tower co being set up in the near term?
They've been working on it, and they have made progress. There are some details, as I understand it, that they continue to work on. But I think there has been some good progress, and hopefully they can get the joint ventures completed relatively soon. I can't give an exact date yet. There are issues to iron out a little bit, and they both have legacy, and this legacy has to be addressed in order to make sure that these joint ventures will perform smoothly in the future.
I guess we have time only for the last question. You touch on the package of the digital economy bills. There are 8 bills in my understanding, and then the government is expected to submit the bill to the NLA sometime in the first quarter of next year. Can you give us more color? Should we expect all 8 bills to be passed, to be enacted at the same time, or there are certain bills that is more priority? And then would we see the role of the NBTC change after the bill is enacted?
Our aim is to present at least the key ones, 3 or 4 of them, together to the NLA, the Parliament, so that they can see the whole picture of the package. They can have a good idea of what we're talking about. Again, these are new to the NLA, new to the Thai people. My advisor knows well. He's a professor of law and ex-NBTC, so he knows the necessity, he knows the complication. But that's the plan. We will try to get as many of them into before the NLA as soon as possible, starting the first quarter next year, so that they can see the whole picture.
I believe we have all learned a great deal today on the government policy and the direction of the telecom industry. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you, Dr. Uttama, the ICT Minister, Dr. Phansak, and then as well as Professor Sutham, again, for spending your time and then your insightful with us. Thank you. ขอบคุณมากครับ